Alrighty then, this is Stewart Richlin from 420lawoffice.com. I've been an attorney here in Southern California for about 25 years, representing medical marijuana patients, co-ops, collectives, doctors, landlords, for about 5 or 6 years out of my 25 years. I hope that you take a little bit of moment to check out the website. There's a blog on there where I can put direct communications to you as they come up. So there's a way for us to stay in touch on a daily basis in addition to the weekly transmission. So please check out 420lawoffice.com. Of course, remember that this program is to be considered general information, not specific to your case, and that you must get your own consultation with this office or another licensed attorney in order to get individual advice. This is just general advice, not to substitute for your own legal, health, or medical information from your own licensed professionals. All right, well, this week is full of a lot of developments, including the fact that Eric Holder about a week ago said that the federal government was going to be releasing new standards or new information about the enforcement policy of the Obama administration on medical marijuana. Of course, the whole community waits on that with bated breath. Also, this office has pointed out in our last radio show that the Assembly Bill 1300, which passed 57-1, is very likely to have a sister bill also pass with an overwhelming majority, which will deliver control of medical marijuana to the cities instead of the states. Apparently, the original draft of this thing included protection for the fact that dispensaries were legal in the state. That part got taken out in committee, and the law that our assembly people have passed is a very dangerous law because it will certainly destroy safe access, as it is now when the cities interfere with state safe access. We're able to say, well, wait a minute. State law does say patients have a right to collectively or cooperatively cultivate, transport, and distribute, and state law does protect patients from criminal charges on the basis of having a location that distributes marijuana for patients. And there's a lot of other stuff in state law that indicates that the cities are out of their minds to try to destroy safe access because it's a state right, and therefore cities are inferior to state rights and state law. But if this new legislation is passed, then state law itself will point back to the cities, and local rule will certainly destroy safe access or limit it. So if you think your city's bad now, under control of state law, wait till your city has unfettered control of medical marijuana. They will certainly destroy safe access, so you need to do something about that right now. What you're going to do is up to you. Maybe you're going to do nothing. I hope that's not you. I hope you're not in the I don't want to know, I don't care to know, I can't handle it crowd. I hope you're in the awake and alive crowd that wants to do something about what's going on in your world. So that means you need to get involved with lobbying your state senate. You need to talk to the governor about the problem. You need to talk to people in ASA and NORML and the other groups and get active. Of course, you can't complain if you don't bother to do anything to change the way things are. All right, well, today we're going to hear a bunch of clips from the internet, including Michael Badnarik's next segment on our constitutional law study together. And let's see what I've got in store for you. Stand by.
This is 420 Law Office Radio.
Well, congratulations are certainly due to Montel Williams for lending his celebrity and his support to medical marijuana. And here's some mainstream media coverage from Channel 2.
Montel Williams, the former TV talk show host, is opening a medical pot shop in Sacramento.
My mother and my father would be willing to walk up to the front door and walk into.
He says it's a place that his mom and dad would walk into. Williams says his pot shop caters to a new crowd of medical marijuana users. Good evening, I'm Sam Shane.
And I'm Colleen Sullivan. Derek Shore is live in Midtown Sacramento with the first step of what could be a new empire for the former talk show host. Derek?
This medical marijuana dispensary here in Midtown, but there is plenty of security. You can see even a metal detector here in the front door, and it's not just because a familiar name is behind this one.
Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Montel Williams spent years as a face of daytime talk, but after 17 years on the air,
welcome to Abaton.
Montel has taken on a new venture right here in Sacramento.
I utilize medicinal cannabis for medication.
The longtime user of medical marijuana has suffered from multiple sclerosis for years.
I suffer from pain. It doesn't matter where it is. I suffer from pain.
And after years of buying his supply from ratty dispensaries, he saw a need for something better.
You see people standing around sticking their nose in things, picking up things with their fingers. I don't walk into CVS and pick up an individual Vicodin.
So today, this is what we have, a labor of love, beautiful tile, stone countertops, in a building that looks more like an office for a high-end plastic surgeon. But why the capital city?
Why not come to where the home of where the movement began? It was here in Sacramento.
Now patients will get medical marijuana in a brand new setting where there's no medication out in glass cases. Instead, the goods will be dispensed through a controlled window and only after talking to a pot advisor.
Why are we treating patients who seek out this medication like they're some lesser member of society?
He says not anymore, and Sacramento will lead the way.
To see if we could set a standard not just for Sacramento, not just for California, not just for the other 16 states that have allowed it now in the District of Columbia, but also for the world.
And as I mentioned, there are no signs here, but you can actually kind of smell some of the merchandise inside if you're just standing right here. I should mention that Montel does not actually own this medical marijuana dispensary. He's working as a consultant in hopes of opening others around the nation. He actually still is working on doing that, but this will be the first.
All right, Derek, thank you.
Well, there is a pretty good radio show out there hosted by Jeff Rense, R-E-N-S-E, and he's got a website at rense.com. He interviewed Gerald Celente, noted futurist and trends master, on 5/12/11. And Celente pointed out a trend, which is a phenomenon called people who just don't want to know. There's a new trend out there. I just don't want to know. People who are kind of in a state of infantilism and they just cannot deal with the adult issues. There's too much stress. They're in denial. They can't confront reality. They just don't want to know.
Thursday. Tomorrow's Friday. And there goes another week. Gerald Celente joins us this first hour tonight, and if you've been watching the Fukushima tragedy, catastrophe, disaster, unparalleled disaster, remember Chernobyl was one reactor. Fukushima has 6. 4 of them are admittedly destroyed. And the admissions have been coming rather slowly, but today TEPCO finally, the Tokyo Electric Power Company, had to let the cat out of the bag, so to speak, and tell the truth. And the truth is the nuclear reactor in Building 1 has melted down in full. They were sitting on this absurd lie for a long time that only 50% of the rods were exposed and had sustained damage, that no more than 50% were dead. There's no water at all on those rods. The water level in Reactor 1 is below the rods. In point of fact, the rods have broken and have fallen down into the bottom of the reactor, into that proverbial molten lava mass of radioactive meltdown muck. And it's eating its way through the bottom of the reactor. There is also an admission that there is most likely a number of holes already in the bottom of the reactor. Now, when that lava mass busts through the bottom of the reactor itself, it falls into the concrete dry well underneath. It'll go right through the containment building, whatever you want to call it, vessel building structure. It'll go down through that, and then we've got the China syndrome. It will continue going. It's not going to stop. There is no way to cool it. There never has been. A number of people have been saying for many weeks that there have been multiple meltdowns at Fukushima. We have the first admission of such today. I can tell you there are at least 3, if not 4, and that comes from studying the very difficult information that we've looked at, and difficult in the sense hard to come by, because the lid came down on this story weeks ago. As you know, I complained about it here. It became more and more difficult to get news from Fukushima, but we were able to do it, and all indications are that the situation there is going to go on for many, many months, if not years, because there's nothing they can do about it. Nothing. And the water around there, is just the beginning point. That radioactivity is going all across the Pacific. I say it's already in the Gulf of Alaska. That's why the EPA and the FDA will not test the fish, won't look into anything at all in terms of monitoring fish. They won't increase radiation testing on rainwater, drinking water, dairy, any more than they did for a couple of weeks. They've cut way back. They won't look into big ag, into the beef industry. Don't look, don't tell. Money is more important than human life, and other such wonderful axioms. How are you, Gerald?
Very good. You know, Jeff, here's a trend. We're finding out that people don't want to know now.
Now that's interesting. I'm all ears. That I believe you. I have no.
It's very true. It's a real trend, because what's happening is that people are aware that, just as you were mentioning about Fukushima, that they can't fix it. There's no way out. And there's no way out of the mess that we're in. So what people are doing is they're denying that. They think that by not noticing it, it can be fixed. Here's a letter that I got today. Dear Mr. Salenti, and I'm getting these, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And we're getting them in very different variations, but the same exact thing. Thank you for your kind offer to reduce your rate to me for the Trends Journal. I have decided not to renew for one basic reason. This world is full of bad events, but in order for me to function, I have chosen to concentrate on the million acts of kindness that mostly go unnoticed for every one bad deed. So you just mentioned about the lies with Fukushima, the poison, everybody that's getting cancer, how this is going to destroy so much of this planet. But that's the one bad deed. What you missed, Jeff, are the million acts of kindness.
Well,
all these people that don't have homes anymore, their lives are ruined, they're suffering. So anyway, I'll go on. I believe in the cosmic consciousness, that's in quotes, and I believe that each of us is part of that. I realize that we must be prepared, but I think we do better to bring about good things by concentrating on the good instead of the bad. I have read every word of your newsletter in the past with interest, but now I am unwilling to see my country and my world as a quagmire, rather a place of divine design in perfect order with unlimited beauty and bounty and opportunities. Now, if that's not bad enough and you're waiting for the unicorns to come, what really gets me is the closing line.
No more. I can't take it anymore.
I got to tell you this one. I implore you to do the same. Imploring me to do the same?
Oh my.
Like I'm so stupid I can't figure out what's going on and I have to bury my head in the sand? And this is going on because, you see, Jeff, people don't want to admit they've been had. They've been conned.
Mm-hmm.
They've been pickpocketed. They've been robbed. They've been lied to, and they be dead.
You got it. Yeah, well, hope he lights an extra incense stick tonight for you or something out of benevolence and kindness. People like you and I are
this is really going to change things. It'll reverse everything that you just talked about in Fukushima, and it's the same story. We know the deal. The tragedy happens. It makes the news. All of a sudden, like that, bam! Fukushima's in the news every day. You're waking up with it. Whoop, gone off the tube.
Yeah.
Off the tube.
Yep.
And what did they replace it with?
The royal wedding.
Libya.
Oh, there was Libya, then the royal wedding.
Then the royal wedding.
And then
Osama.
They dug him up and killed him again.
They killed him again. And people believe this fish story.
That's amazing. That's
what's going on. I'm serious. This is the I don't want to know trend. I'm an adult, but I'm going to keep acting like a stupid little kid.
Yeah.
And what's happened, I have a line, and this is very important. And by the way, I'm cutting back and doing a number of spots with different people because I'm tired of arguing. You know my motto: think for yourself. I don't tell people what to believe. If you want to believe what you want to believe, that's your business.
Good luck.
Don't tell me I have to believe because you believe. And what's going on here is this phrase that I've come up with that really sums it up: why people don't want to know. And it's because conservatives believe and liberals lie. You see, conservatives believe things like, we got to fight them over there so we don't fight them over here.
Yeah.
And they believe things like, them Iranians, what we got to do is we got to bomb them so they don't get that nuclear bomb. And while we're at it, we're going to bomb North Korea and kill all them Muslims. That's the way they think.
Yeah.
They actually believe it. They believe it, right?
True.
Liberals lie. Liberals say things like, hey, Obama said he wasn't going to, go along with the Bush tax cuts. He said when he was president he would not renew them, and he did. Well, he has to make some kind of deals so he can get more of what he wants. Hey, but did you just see that Obama is now going to classify unclassified documents, and he said that he was all for transparency? Well, this is a negotiation for other things. He's increased the war in Afghanistan 3 times beyond what Bush had it, and now he's in Pakistan. Well, his hands are tied. He can't do everything, and he is getting orders from other people. Hey, look, he's just reinstated the Patriot Act. The rendition is worse than it was on the Bush. They're sending people all over the world to get tortured. Well, give him a chance. There's just so much he can do. They'll make every excuse they can. They're liars. Liberals are liars.
This man's litany of lies so far exceeds any other alleged president in American history, that I just can't even. It boggles my brain. And as far as the deniers, don't bother me with the facts. My mind is made up. So leave them alone. Give them another shovel. They can bury their friends' heads in the sands too. I don't have any time for them. That letter ought to be published in one of your alerts.
I am.
Oh, good. That tells the story.
It's a beauty, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Here
come the unicorns.
Yeah, they sure are.
Yes, the I don't want to know trend. I hope those of you that are bothering to listen to this program are not in the I don't want to know trend, and I hope you are actively freeing minds, freeing people, studying, working, preparing, and exercising your freedoms in every way that you will. Thanks for joining the program. Let's check out Michael Badnarik, and former president candidate for the Libertarian Party, speaking about the Constitution of the United States. Check out his full program on YouTube. Here is Section 3, Michael Badnarik.
Somebody jumps into your car and starts driving away, what do? Say, oh, gosh, I better call the insurance company. Or do you chase after them and try to get your car back? It's your property. Now, most of you do not own half the things that you think that you own. There is a concept known as allodial title. Allodial title means that you own it. I mean, the way that we think of when we say that you own something. Allodial title is generally referred to when we talk about land. If you own the land in allodial title, then you genuinely own the land. How many people went to a real estate agent when they bought their house? Okay, when you go to a real estate agent, are you buying property or real estate? There is a difference. When you buy real estate, you purchase everything from the ground up. You own the house, you own the trees, but you do not own the earth that it sits on. Can you go out in your backyard and drill for oil? No. Why? Because there's an ordinance against it? If it's your property, can you do whatever you want with your property? And if I can't drill for oil in my backyard, then apparently I don't own the property. Do you pay property taxes? Why? who are you paying property taxes to? If it's yours, why would you have to give somebody else money? And the truth of the matter is that you do not own the land. You own the house on top of the land, but you are renting the actual land. And unless you have a allodial title to the land, it is not yours. Now, we will talk about allodial title when we get to the history of the United States. When we broke off with England, people in the American continent here, the people in the United States, were the first people allowed to own land in allodial title. Prior to that, everything was owned by the king. Now, there are 50 states in the United States. Only one currently still allows you to own land in allodial title. And you are all very, very lucky because that state is Texas. However, most people in Texas still do not own their land in allodial title. Learning how to own your land in allodial title is another class that I haven't written yet. Now, let's talk about property. I want to really have you understand it. Let us presume that I own my land in allodial title, the way that we think of when we own something. Now, if it's my land, and I have this stack of lumber on my land, can I take that stack of lumber and nail it together in the shape of a house? Yes. Why is that? Why can I build that house? Because it's my land, it's my wood, it's all my property. And I can do whatever I want with my property. I don't have to ask anybody for permission. So now I build this house on my property. And I look at that house 2 weeks later and I go, well, I've changed my mind. I really don't want that particular house. Can I take all those nails out and disassemble that house and stack the lumber back up? Yes. Yes, because it is my property. I can rearrange my property and put it in any shape I want. Well, it took me a long time. It was a lot of work to nail all that stuff together. And it's going to be a lot more work to, pull it apart and stack it up again. And the wood's not that important to me. Can I light a match and burn that house down? Some people say yes, some people say no. Is it arson? No, it's not arson. I can burn my own house down if I want. It's my house. If I have a chair in the kitchen, I go, I really don't like this chair. Can I break it up and throw it in the fireplace? Yes. I can burn the chair because it's my property. Why can't I build a house? Burn the house. It's just a bigger chunk of property. So I have a right to burn down my own house, and it's not arson. Unless I have insurance out on it. Now, if I have insurance on the house and I burn it down, that's fraud. I'm going to be thrown in jail not for burning the house down, but for lying to the insurance company and trying to get their money if I try to collect. That's where the problem is. So you have to really understand rights. And if you understand property, you have some idea where rights come from. All right derives from property. And you can do whatever you want with your property. Now, there's another, I want to warn you that the government is trying to take your property away. They want your stuff. They are stealing your car, in effect. Are you going to chase after them? Now, I have a quote that says, "Every man holds his property subject to the general right of the community to regulate its use to whatever degree the public welfare may require it." What does that mean? Like, okay, it's your house, and we're going to let you have that as long as it's okay with us. We're going to vote on whether or not you can build the house. We're going to vote on whether or not you can burn the house down. Who's in charge? You? I thought it was your property. Guess who said that? That was a traitor. Theodore Roosevelt, President of the United States. These are socialist ideas. All right? Now, the second important concept that derives from right is that every single right has a responsibility. You cannot have one without the other. You cannot have a right without responsibility. You cannot have a responsibility without a right. It is impossible. Just the same way, I cannot have a heads without a tails. If I've got one, I've got the other. They're opposite sides of the same coin. Now, your right holds the responsibility of exercising that right properly. Does a 6-year-old child have a right to life? Anybody say no? Good. All right? A 6-year-old does have a right to life. Why? Because that 6-year-old owns its body. Your body is the first property that you own. As you come into the world, on the day of your birth, you are a property owner. You know, it's tiny, it's pink, and it's crying, but that's your property. Now, does a 6-year-old have a right to keep a weapon on their hip? Can they walk around with a concealed weapon? Generally not. Even I, strong Second Amendment supporter, would not give a gun to a 6-year-old. Why? Because a 6-year-old does not have the mental capacity to understand their responsibility. A 6-year-old does not quite understand that death is permanent and irreversible. On the cartoons and on TV, you can shoot somebody and they go, ah! And then 5 seconds later they jump up and go, okay, next. It's all pretend. Well, death is not pretend. It is permanent and it is real, and you cannot undo it. So if you are walking around with a gun and you are capable of taking someone else's life, you better not make a mistake. A 6-year-old is not smart enough to make those decisions. So we deny the 6-year-old the right to exercise carrying a gun and exercising the Second Amendment.
And that was Michael Badnarik. You know, while we're talking about Second Amendment and the right to keep and bear arms, there's really no ambiguity whatsoever in that amendment. You have to learn how to read it and understand it, and you'll see that what the Constitution tells you is that since our country is going to have an army, the right of the people to bear arms shall not be infringed, because a standing army was known to be a possible basis for tyranny in those days. Well, now talk about tyranny. Medical marijuana patients who happen to grow marijuana in their home and have a gun in that home may face a federal double penalty of that growing felony because of the presence of the gun or weapon in the commission of a federal drug crime. What a terrible injustice. Every single medical marijuana patient in the state of California has effectively had their gun rights removed. Why is it important to have a gun? Why is it important to have gun rights? The reason that our forefathers put that in the Constitution is so that the government could not take your rights, your life, your liberty, your property, your family. Our country was based on an armed insurrection, a revolution against tyranny. Unfortunately, our forefathers would roll in their graves to know the type of tyranny we live under in our country right now. Are you making any of the following mistakes in your collective? Are you a nonprofit but not exactly sure how to run as a nonprofit? Are you trying to hide compensation in the form of bonuses? Do you have a correct relationship with your landlord and City Hall? Do you need to avail yourself of legal redress with reference to your local city? Or do you need further training and compliance checking? Whatever your needs, whether it's simple formation of your new collective according to the law, or assisting you with the aforementioned, please be sure to contact me. My name is Stewart Richlin, and I've been a lawyer for 25 years, representing medical marijuana collectives, co-ops, and dispensaries for over 5 years, and now focusing exclusively on this topic and representing in excess of 200 medical marijuana dispensaries. My 800 number is 888-420-LAW-1. That's 888-420-LAW-1. Thank you so much for letting me be of service. Well, in addition to the emergency that marijuana faces in terms of safe access with Assembly Bill 1300, we also have Senate Bill 847, which will have the effect of felonizing thousands of patients who currently have small legal collectives in their own private residential property. How dare these politicians who seem to have not fucking read the Constitution think that they can criminalize people's activities on their own homes and in their own property? When are they going to make it illegal to grow a tomato? When are they going to make it illegal to grow any crop? Maybe we'll have to buy everything from the GMO factories of big pharma, big corporations, big agra, tobacco and alcohol. Honestly, fuck these politicians. Have they no brains? Dale Geringer, committee from the normal director, says, this bill will make felons of thousands of medical marijuana patients who currently use their private residence to grow for more than one person. Because many patients cannot grow on their own property and don't have convenient or affordable sources of medicine, they frequently share collective garden space with other patients who do. SB 847 will therefore have the effect of unwittingly felonizing thousands of patients. Listen, you guys got to get active about this. You've got to do something about it now. We've got a crisis in this state. We have a United States Supreme Court mandate to reduce our prison population by 33,000 people. They are putting our brothers and sisters in jail who are medical marijuana patients. What the fuck? And you know something? Patients tend to get longer sentences than murderers. The medical marijuana, maybe not so much, but in marijuana sentencing in general, they get worse penalties than murderers and rapists. It's outrageous. You've got to get angry. You've got to do something about it. As far as SB 847, you've got to do something about it. The vote's next Tuesday. I can only write one letter. Everyone listening can write a letter. I can tell all of you. Who are you going to tell? Well, all that notwithstanding, and as we wait for news from the federal government on their position as it evolves, Miracle Grow, the gigantic fertilizer company, wants a piece of the pie. And here's from Bloomberg.
Good morning. Scott's Miracle Grow wants to get into the medical marijuana business, branching out from weed killer. The Wall Street Journal says Scott's wants to help people grow killer weed. Now, the paper says Scott's trying to break out from depending on Home Depot, Lowe's, and Walmart to sell its products, since retailers aren't expanding as fast as they used to. Well, medical marijuana is illegal under federal law, but it is legal in more than 16 states.
And it's that conflict of law that makes things so interesting and also so messed up for patients and for lawyers, because it's very difficult to give your clients any certainty about the law when we depend upon conflicting rules from different systems. For instance, federal law says medical marijuana is a felony to grow or sell. State law says patients may cultivate, transport, and distribute collectively and cooperatively. Federal law says that they want their taxes on every activity from which one derives income, even if it is illegal. Yet one cannot say medical marijuana on one's tax return, or one could certainly be giving a Fifth Amendment waiver and a confession. Then again, even though the government demands taxes for medical marijuana, they don't allow deductions for medical marijuana trafficking. And on, the split in one's mind. The cities say they won't give a license. The Board of Equalization says they will give you a seller's permit even if you don't say what you're selling. The state law says collectives may exist and that they are not a nuisance. The cities try to claim that they are a nuisance. We're going to be in court on Monday of next week. We're going to be arguing again for the medical marijuana patients here in the city of Los Angeles in Department 309 at 600 South Commonwealth. So that's going to be Monday the 20th, the day after Father's Day, at 10 a.m. So be sure to be there if you would like to participate as a court watcher and as a concerned citizen to see the proceedings as we attempt to rein in the city of Los Angeles's ordinance, which many attorneys agree is, again, unconstitutional, violates the spirit and the letter of the law, and violates the court's prior order. Well, let's see what else we've got in the way of clips as the show rolls on.
This is 420 Law Office Radio.
Here's a nice little bit of audio in which the presenter compares the minimum wage and marijuana prohibition.
The Conservative War on Drug Prohibition by Jack Hunter. Most people can't imagine an America without a minimum wage. Without such wage regulation, many people believe poverty would run rampant, families would become homeless, and children would be starving in the streets. Yet conservatives have rightly recognized that these are moralistic and emotional responses to what is essentially an economic problem. Pointing out the policy's failure, National Review founder William F. Buckley wrote, quote, "The minimum wage is about as discredited as the Flat Earth Society. Yet the very notion of getting rid of it remains something most Americans simply cannot fathom. Most people can't imagine an America without the war on drugs. Without federal drug laws, many believe substance abuse would be rampant, families would be destroyed, and the nation's youth would be strung out across our streets. Yet opponents of federal drug laws have rightly recognized that these are moralistic and emotional responses to what is essentially an economic, political, and due to our approach, criminal problem. In 1995, National Review declared, "The war on drugs is lost." Leading this charge, Buckley broke down the troublesome cost of prohibition. Quote, "We are speaking of a plague that consumes an estimated $75 billion per year of public money, exacts an estimated $70 billion a year from consumers, is responsible for nearly 50% of the million Americans who are today in jail, occupies an estimated 50% of the trial time of our judiciary, and takes the time of 400,000 policemen, yet a plague for which no cure is at hand nor in prospect." Much like the minimum wage, virtually all data available on drug prohibition points to the utter ineffectiveness of our policies. The primary difference is that prohibition of drugs has been far more damaging to this country than prohibition of market-determined base wage levels. Whether measured in dollars or lives, the war on drugs continues to be a great and unnecessary tragedy. It should not be surprising that those most comfortable with the damage caused by the war on drugs have often belonged to administrations that have wrought the most damage on this country. Denouncing Congressman Ron Paul's opposition to federal drug prohibition, former Bush speechwriter Michael Gerson wrote this week in the Washington Post, quote, "Welcome to Paulsville, where people are free to take soul-destroying substances and debase their bodies to support their personal habits." Added Gerson, quote, "In determining who is a major candidate for president, let's begin here. It is difficult to be a first-tier candidate while holding second-rate values." Gerson was addressing the first Republican presidential debate last week, in which the moderators seemed intent on belittling Paul's position on federal drug laws by using the most extreme example of heroin use, similar to how left-wing defenders of the minimum wage might invoke visions of homeless mothers and starving children. Paul's simple yet controversial position is that drugs should be regulated at the state and local level as the Constitution demands, just like alcohol. But Gerson's review of Paul's debate performance specifically focused on what the Bush speechwriter found to be a cold and dismissive libertarian attitude toward the very real problem of drug abuse. Gerson is not completely wrong in his criticism. Neither was Buckley when he highlighted the larger question by addressing the same aspect of this issue as Gerson. Quote, "Those who suffer from the abuse of drugs have themselves to blame for it. This does not mean that society is absolved from active concern for their plight. It does mean that their plight is subordinate to the plight of those citizens who do not experiment with drugs, but whose life, liberty, and property are substantially affected by the illegalization of drugs sought after by the minority." Gerson believes Paul's second-rate values on drugs makes him a second-tier candidate, despite any polling data or fundraising achievements to the contrary. Gerson should know, as the speechwriter once worked for an electorally successful first-tier candidate, and for the next 8 years, through his spending and big government agenda, the once top-tier George W. Bush would proceed to take the GOP brand to unprecedented lows. If Paulsville is the place for supposedly second-tier ideas like drug legalization, Bushville was the land of consistent discredited status quo insanity. In domestic policy, foreign policy, drug policy, all served up and made rhetorically palatable to conservative audiences by speechwriters like Gerson. In his later years, Buckley would call the Iraq War a mistake, denounce Bush, and support an end to the federal drug war, all parts of Paul's unconventional Republican platform. Would a candidate Buckley today be considered second-tier for his views? Would supposedly first-tier candidates like Tim Pawlenty or Rick Santorum be preferable or somehow more genuinely conservative, not only in their support for Bush and Obama's policies, but in their disagreements with Buckley on those same policies? Buckley wrote, quote, "The minimum wage is an accretion of the New Deal that is not defended by any serious economist. The same is now true of the thoroughly discredited war on drugs, a disastrous policy that, given its evident failure, should now belong to a distant era. That the more traditionally conservative yet unconventionally Republican Ron Paul now leads on this issue is as symbolically appropriate as the fact that so many of his fellow Republicans still lazily and reflexively oppose him on it. Or as the late William F. Buckley once described right-wing resistance on revisiting the war on drugs, quote, "Conservatives pride themselves on resisting change, which is as it should be. But intelligent deference to tradition and stability can evolve into intellectual sloth and moral fanaticism, as when conservatives simply decline to look up from dogma because the effort to raise their heads and reconsider is too great."
This set of audio clips features some of the great voices of conservative America talking about how terrible prohibition is.
But there's something else we've got to recognize. We're locking up people that take a couple of puffs of marijuana, and the next thing you know, they got 10 years. They've got mandatory sentences, and these judges just say, they throw up their hands and say, nothing we can do, there's mandatory sentences. We've got to take a look at what we're considering crimes, and that's one of them. I mean, I'm not exactly for use of drugs, don't get me wrong, but I just believe that criminalizing marijuana, criminalizing the possession of a few ounces of pot and that kind of thing, I mean, it's costing us a fortune, and it's ruining young people. Young people go into prisons, they go in as youths, and they come out as hardened criminals, and that's not a good thing.
Exactly. People do have preformed views which are not based on their own experience, but simply what they've heard on the news media, and they haven't really paused to sit down and analyze these views properly. It's a sign of the madness and the criminal violence of our society that it dictates whether or not we may experience the healing effects of this plant. It is an extraordinary thing to call the consumption of marijuana a crime. It is a victimless crime, if it's a crime at all. An individual alone in his or her own house, sampling a plant which has been with humanity since the beginning of time, for that to be called criminal is insane. We live in an insane society that believes it has a right to patrol even our consciousness. Not only to tell us how to behave out there in public, but to tell us actually what to think and what to experience. And that's the main objection to marijuana by our government, is the effect that it has on consciousness. And they don't care that it is a fantastic pain reliever, which it is. They don't care about its wonderful medical properties. They just want to stop anybody experiencing these effects on consciousness. And no wonder our society is in such a mess, where we imagine we live in a democracy and yet elect governments that actually have the nerve to tell us what we may and may not experience inside our own heads without doing any harm to others. There is so much hypocrisy, so much humbug in government positions on these matters. Governments know perfectly well that the rules that they have made, the misery that they inflict on people's lives, don't get rid of these problems. If we really want to solve the problem of drugs, we need to open up the whole issue to broad public discussion, and we have to accept and admit that certain plant products, such as these ancient hallucinogens that shamans use, are entirely beneficial in their interaction with the human race. This is what governments are afraid of. They are afraid of a citizenry that is fully conscious. They actually want us to be unconscious. They want us to simply focus on this alert, problem-solving, competitive mentality that makes us good consumers and good competitors in the business place. But they don't want us to explore the majestic and amazing depths of our consciousness, because then we just might start asking questions that would be very uncomfortable for the powers that be.
If he's asking me, do I favor the decriminalization of marijuana, the answer is obviously yes, and not just for medical reasons. Though the most striking thing about marijuana is its medical properties. It's well known to help people deal with the horrible results of chemotherapy, namely intense nausea, which prevents people from recovering by making them unable to digest or keep down food. And it's also, bizarrely, I don't know why this is, I'm not a physician, but it's a very useful treatment for glaucoma. It's a very damaging condition for the eyes. But I just think it's beyond the competence of the state to decide a question like this. You can't hope for the government to be able to control what substance somebody puts in their own body. So even if I thought marijuana was poison, I still would say, no, the government is not going to be able to stop people and shouldn't try. The marijuana user commits a victimless crime. And it's really horrific that we make room in our prison system for people who've done no more than that.
There has never been a medical reason for criminalizing marijuana. I looked through the history of this if you're interested. I don't know if you want me to run through it, but it's an interesting history. Marijuana was criminalized. See, very commonly, substances are criminalized because they're associated with what are called the dangerous classes. You know, poor people or working people. So, for example, in England in the 19th century, there was a period when gin was criminalized and whiskey wasn't, because gin is what poor people drank. That's kind of like the sentencing for crack and powder. You know. When in the early stages of Prohibition in the United States, one of the targets was immigrant workers. You know, these guys hanging around the saloons in New York. Got to go after them. The rich guys in upstate New York, they're going to drink no matter what. You know, they want to come home after work, they'll drink. But go after those guys. What about marijuana? The marijuana was brought in by Mexicans. And the first criminalization of marijuana was in the Southwest, in the States. It was in New Mexico, later Utah, and so on. And it was specifically targeted against Mexicans. It didn't get criminalized in the United States until shortly after Prohibition ended. After Prohibition ended, we had this huge Bureau of Narcotics, and they had to do something. So they discovered, you know, that marijuana is going to do all kind of horrible things to you. The Senate testimony about this is mind-boggling. They did have a representative of the American Medical Association who said, we don't have any medical evidence about this. He was shut up, denounced, you know, they got rid of him right away. Then they found somebody else. This is literally true. They found a pharmacologist, a guy teaching at Temple University, who was doing experiments with marijuana in dogs. Okay. And they brought this guy in to test. The testimony is hilarious. You know, you really have to read it. They brought this guy, and he testified that when he gave marijuana to dogs, they went insane. You know, they do all kind of things. And then some senator or somebody asked him. This is from memory, so it's probably a little off, but something like this. It was in the 30s. They asked the guy, "Well, have you ever tried marijuana on humans?" So he said, "Yeah, I tried it on himself." And he said, well, what happened? He said, I turned into a vulture. I started flying around the room, you know. So oh my God, this stuff is terrible. It makes people insane. And marijuana, it was declared by Congress that marijuana makes people insane. But then something happened. It turned out that lawyers, defense lawyers, got the idea, okay, I can use this for an insanity defense.
Ah, yes, an interesting twist on claiming that marijuana made people insane was that now you had to let defendants go if they claimed they were doing crimes because of marijuana's influence. Well, we know marijuana doesn't make people insane. In fact, marijuana contains an antipsychotic. Just do the research. Anyone who's bothered to look at the facts knows that it's a complete scientific and legal fraud to claim that marijuana has no medical use. Thus, it cannot be on Schedule I. Thus, it cannot be the felony that it is. Thus, there is no conflict of law. Thus, all of those laws are void ab initio as unconstitutional and grounded on fallacy. Unfortunately, the people who have the guns in the jails say otherwise. Well, let's round it off with one more clip with some balanced information. As you know, Bayer, one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world, seems to think marijuana has plenty of medical use. They manufacture Sativex, and it's available in pharmacies in Europe, in Canada. And why isn't it available here? Heck, I don't know. All right, you guys, take good care. This program, I've got one more clip for you, but let me go ahead and give you the final bye-bye right now. This program is copyright 2011 by Stewart Richlin, all rights reserved, except as to those clips which we use pursuant to the Fair Use Act of the Copyright, Fair Use Provision of the Copyright Act. And thanks again for visiting. Take good care.
It's a surprising situation for a plant that's been with us so long. Other plant-based drugs with medical uses, such as aspirin, cocaine, and heroin, have all been exploited for their full benefits. But cannabis lags behind. In fact, only now is the world's first legal medicine based on the cannabis plant being produced, deep in the English countryside. I'm going there for a rare glimpse. Even though it's all done completely legally, with the permission of the Home Office, the security arrangements means that the exact location has to remain a secret, and that means we're going to have to turn the camera off.
Come on through, John.
Thank you. So this is it?
This is it, and you can see here one of our growing areas and a fairly wide selection of plants. Come on in and have a look.
Thank you. Gosh, there's loads of it. How many plants have we got here?
There's about 5,000 plants here, and every year we grow about 30,000.
And how much sort of volume of cannabis would this produce a year?
Well, the payload, the botanical raw materials, it's called, about a ton.
Gosh. To turn it into a saleable pain relief medicine, the cannabis is first dried. Each and every plant is a clone, so that the exact properties are known and consistent.
It's rather like hanging out the washroom. Let's go in here now.
Got you.
Thank you very much. We need to get into this kit, I'm afraid.
Okay. Okay. Next, it is milled and heated.
So we see the raw material there, botanical raw material.
Right.
Will be put into the mill, and it's ground down to particles of about 1 millimetre.
But at this stage, nothing's wasted. It all goes in.
All goes in there, exactly.
The plant material is reduced to a concentrate.
And then it ends up in here, spinning down at 60 degrees, and all the ethanol just evaporates away. To give you an idea of the sort of material it is, you can see it's sort of treacle-like.
Yeah, it's quite sticky, isn't it?
It really is quite sticky, and that makes it quite hard to work with, therefore.
Let's have a look at that. Oh, right. So, oh, gosh. The final product is a liquid which the patient sprays into their mouth, so removing the need for harmful smoking. Yet, despite this meticulous processing, it's still not widely available. It's not exactly taking its place in the pharmacies across the country. Is that because the effects are quite weak?
I don't think they're not weak at all. I think that cannabis wouldn't have survived over the millennia as a medicinal entity if it had been weak. And cannabis-based medicines aren't weak. It's simply that we're dealing, I think, with a group of patients who, first of all, have tried all the standard medicines and haven't responded before they ever come into the clinical trials with this particular drug. We're dealing with outcome measures which are rather vague, so pain and spasticity are very difficult to quantify in a research situation.
Despite this, so far the only available product is a treatment for pain caused by multiple sclerosis, and this is licensed only in Canada. But there's the possibility of treating many more ailments thanks to an unexpected property of the plant.
If you look in the microscope there, you'll see sort of some glistening golf ball-like structures. And those are the glandular trichomes in the inflorescence of the plant, which contain all the chemicals that we're interested in for making a medicine.
It's not just THC. These trichomes contain CBD, another valuable chemical.
There's quite a lot of CBD in that particular one as well, cannabidiol, which is another cannabinoid, a non-psychoactive cannabinoid, which we think is actually a very important component of the medicine.
So from your point of view, in terms of developing medications, cannabidiol, CBD, what role does that have?
Well, we hope it's going to... I mean, we're fascinated by this stuff, which, you know, has tremendous potential as an anti-inflammatory,
yes,
but also, rather surprisingly, as an antipsychotic.
So, hold on, you're telling me that CBD could be a treatment for psychosis?
Isn't that ironic? With all the sort of tremendous publicity around the link with cannabis smoking and the potential of increasing the risk of psychosis, here we have a component of the plant which itself is antipsychotic.
And we're saying that the same plant...
Within the same plant you've got a chemical which actually has a completely opposite effect and which may therefore be protective to some extent. And so I think it's a level of concern that some of the recreational cannabis that's out there contains no CBD at all, and that is a modern phenomenon. Previously, you know, it was much more usual for people to be smoking some cannabis with some CBD in it at least.
As recreational cannabis plants are grown for higher THC content, so their CBD content falls, simply because the plant isn't able to produce high levels of both. So your trick as a developer of medication is to, I suppose, change the relative balance of THC and CBD, cannabidiol.
Exactly. Getting that proportion right for different conditions is going to be absolutely key. So we think that for pain and spasticity, a roughly equal balance of THC and CBD is good, because each has their own type of pharmacology, quite separate mechanisms of action, and they interact together in a helpful way, probably along with other plant constituents too. But for other conditions, like perhaps inflammation or psychosis, you wouldn't want probably any THC at all.
Right.
You'd want some of the other plant components, but you'd want the CBD mainly alongside those other components.
For a plant that's been known and used medicinally for almost 3,000 years, it's surprising that new chemicals and uses are still being discovered. What I find even more surprising is that the medicinal use of cannabis is so far from being widely accepted.